Hello, fellow reviewers. So we're trying something new today. I've been getting some really fantastic comments on my videos, and I don't mean compliments, although there are a few of those and they're very nice, thank you. But I mean more the really thoughtful and insightful comments, even critical comments that add further information or insight to a topic or point out where maybe I've got something a little bit wrong. And inspired by that feedback, I want to trial a new short form segment for my channel called Backchat. Now, if you are old enough and Australian enough, you'll know that I'm shamelessly ripping that title off the old ABC TV show Backchat with Tim Bowden, which each week read out some of the correspondence that had been sent in to the ABC about their programming.
Good evening, and we begin tonight with a poem from F.J. Owens of Gracetown, Western Australia.
Oh, Tim, dear Tim, things look grim. Choice of programmes very slim. You've changed the time of weekend news.
I haven't received any poems yet, but I am going to try and do a similar thing, which is read out and engage with some of the feedback on the content that I've put out. Starting with my most recent review, which was of the No Rogan Experience, a podcast which unpacks the Joe Rogan experience.
It is the podcast where two podcasters with now 100 hours plus of Rogan experience get to know Joe Rogan. It's a show for anyone who's curious about Joe Rogan, his guests and all of their claims, and just anyone who wants to understand Joe's ever-growing media influence.
Now, if you haven't seen that review, you can watch it here. But to summarize my take on that podcast, I said I thought it did a really excellent job of fact-checking and correcting the record on things that had been said on the Joe Rogan experience. I said I really loved the way they promoted critical thinking and skepticism. And my main critical note was just that I felt the left-leaning tone of the show might alienate people who don't share the host's political outlook. And then it made it feel a little bit at times like there was more of an eagerness to call out bullshit from the right than from the left. I also suggested that having somebody on their pod who was a bit more of a Rogan sympathizer might help alleviate that. Anyway, the No Rogan guys saw my review, and Marsh, one of the hosts, left a really gracious and insightful comment on my video, which I've pinned to the top so that you can go and have a look, where he engaged with some of the criticism I'd made and offered some insight as to why their show runs the way it does.
I think some shows it's harder than others to maintain an approachable tone for Rogan's fans, and it's something we definitely continue to aim for despite when we miss. Though stating our biases is our way of also trying to ensure nobody thinks we're trying to falsely pretend to be totally neutral. There's much too much of that on the internet, especially among thought influencers like Joe's various guests. Not sure of the logistics of including a pro-Rogan audience surrogate, maybe one to explore if a TV commissioner ever has spare money they want to throw at us.
So I really appreciated that good faith engagement with the comments I'd made. And I actually received a number of comments from you guys pushing back a little bit or challenging the remarks I made about the left-leaning nature of the show. This comment from Matthew encapsulates a lot of the points people made.
Something I think about a lot is this idea of criticising and fact-checking the political right and left equally. I think if one side uses false information in their rhetoric and propaganda 10 times more than the other, and they get 10 times more criticism, then the bias is in the data, not the criticiser. But of course, you have to be able to seek out and find the misinformation coming from the side you agree with. Just a thought.
I think that's a great thought, and it's probably something I should have taken a bit more care to be clear about when I was making my comments. So let me clarify here what I meant. I'm not saying that we ought to see a 50-50 split in criticism or calling out bullshit from the right and the left, or that would be the only way we would know that people were being fair. I think that depending on the time and the topic, there's often one side being far more egregious in their bullshit than the other. And I also acknowledge that some types of bullshit are far more damaging and harmful than others. So there may well be far more criticism being deservedly directed one way. What I was trying to say is that it's important to try to be consistent in calling out bullshit no matter who it's coming from. And speaking of which, let me take this opportunity to correct myself. Fearless Joe Banzai left a comment calling me out over the way I represented Joe Rogan's complaints about media coverage of him using ivermectin to treat COVID. So just to remind you, this is the clip of Rogan that I used in my video.
Do I have to sue CNN?
I don't know, do you?
They're making shit up. They keep saying I'm taking horse dewormer. I literally got it from a doctor. It's an American company.
Mm-hmm.
They won the Nobel Prize in 2015 for use in human beings.
Yeah.
And CNN is saying I'm taking horse dewormer.
Yeah, what? So
They must know that that's a lie.
There's a lot of people saying it.
And here is Fearless Joe's comment on that.
Nah, you're completely mischaracterizing the whole point. His point is that he was defamed in the media for taking something that is horse medicine when it is a well-known human medicine that did win a prize and has helped tens of millions of people, was prescribed by a licensed medical professional, yet was attacked as something only used on animals.
I think that's a fair point, so my apologies for that. However, I do stand by the fact that the media's broader criticism of Joe was primarily around him using ivermectin, whether in animal or human form, to treat COVID and to attribute his fast recovery to the drug.
But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Yeah.
I got better pretty quick, bitch.
Now, the final piece of feedback I want to share is a recommendation that came in a few times in the comments for another YouTube channel called The Elephant Graveyard. So this channel has put out quite a few video essays now, taking a look at Joe Rogan and the comedy scene, which are starting to get quite a bit of attention.
Elephant Graveyard has been producing some of the funniest, most entertaining and insightful critiques of the manosphere, the UFC-influenced contingent of right-wing stand-up comics who have ascended from comedy clubs to the White House.
Now, obviously, my review and the No Rogan experience itself were far less focused on the comedy aspect of Joe Rogan, but I was really grateful that people pointed this channel out in the comments because let's not forget that Joe Rogan is supposedly first and foremost a comic, and a very powerful and influential one at that. And I've now had a watch of the Elephant Graveyard's videos. Yes, I'm a little bit behind the zeitgeist on this, but I think their observations on Joe Rogan's influence on the comedy and political world and the sort of culty vibes of the Austin comedy scene are well worth considering. As a starting point, I recommend his 90-minute Adam Curtis-style video essay, Comedy Jonestown, How Comedy Was Destroyed by an Anti-Reality Doomsday Cult.
The cultists all submit to the authority of its charismatic leader who can never be questioned or crossed. He's a supreme leader, and Austin is comedy North Korea. Comedy cultists must pay tribute to the dear leader by praising him and are expected to excessively embellish his abilities, often to an absurd degree.
How many people on Earth do you think could kill you? 100, to be generous?
Maybe.
Very few people can kill you if they want to.
This is straight out of the North Korean playbook, where they pretend their dear leader was the world's greatest golfer after shooting 38 under par on his first ever round, including 11 holes in one. Comedy cultists are expected to study the beliefs of their dear leader and prove their commitment and allegiance by repeating his own opinions back to him.
Yes, it's long, but it's pretty great. Okay, well, that's all from me and Kenny for now. I promise you I won't be doing a segment on the comments on this segment, but please do let me know what you think of Backchat as a concept. Cheers.